5 is all about decimals, so everything we did in chapter 1, 2, and 4, where we learned about them, how to say their names, how to round, and then we learned all the computations, add, subtract, multiply, divide. We're just going to do all that with decimals, okay? And this is the last chapter where you're not allowed to use your calculator. When we get to chapter 6, you'll be able to use your calculator. So this next test will be split into 2 parts. Chapter 5, where there's no calculator, and then chapter 6, where there's calculator. The place value here is the same place value chart that we had in chapter 1, but the one we had in chapter 1 just went directly to the left, right? And so we had ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, but now we have tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and so forth. And let me get one. I edited, mine's the old one. I kind of edited it a little bit. If you look at the top, guys, instead of writing it, because it is a fraction, and that's what's kind of interesting. Decimals are just fractions. So 1/10 is also the same thing as 0.1. 1/100th is the same thing as 0.01. So I edited it up here and kind of wrote it in decimal form, depending where you are. Wherever that 1 is, that's the place value. So this 1's in the tenths, hundredths, and so forth, okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to do this lecture where we're going to do some of the old stuff like 9 and 900 here, but then we're going to get into some of the decimals. So the first one just wants to say, hey, what place value is the 9 in each of these numbers? Bless you. So what place value is the 9 in the word 90, or the number 90? The tens, yeah. So that's nothing new. Where is it in B? Hundreds. But in C and D are the new stuff. Where is this technically? Tenths, right? And then where's the 9? Hundredths. How I kind of remember is just think of how many zeros there is in 10. There's only 1 0 in 10, so we're only 1 point past the decimal point, so that's a tenth, right? How many zeros in hundredths? 2, so we're 2 points past the decimal, just something kind of cheesy like that. So how we do this is when we write it in words, the front part, if you're in front of the decimal, guys, you say the number like normal, like that's 8. When you see the period or the decimal point, it's the word and, okay? So this is 8 and then when you see the decimal, you read it like you see it. So that's the number 54, correct? But then wherever that last digit is, it's 54 hundredths, okay? So you read the number as you see it. So you read the decimal as you see it, but wherever that last value is on your place chart, you say that afterwards. So guys, this would be 8 and what? 54 hundredths.
Is it 100 because there's 2 decimals?
Right. The 4 is in the hundredth spot. Yep, there's 2 decimals there. So the front number is just how you would read it. So 8, the decimal point is and then the decimal is read it like you see it, but then wherever that last value is, that's the spot it's in. So how would you say F? Well, negative, right? Is that okay? Negative. And then how would you just read that number? 382 thousandths, because the 2 is in the thousand spot. So this is negative 382. I feel like there's not enough spots. What do we say? Negative 382 thousandths. And then G, notice we have a decent number in front of the decimal. How would you say that number? 7,002, and then the decimal is and then what's the number behind? Just the number 9, but what spot is it in? Hundredths. So this is 7,002 and 9 hundredths. And just like we had in chapter 1 and 2, you guys won't actually have to physically type these out. You'll just pick the multiple choice answer that's correct. Okay? And notice why we don't say 700 or 7,002, because and is decimal, right? So it's just 7,002 and 9 hundredths. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go backwards. They're going to give it in words, and we have to write it as numbers. Remember, anything in front of the word and is a normal number, okay? and is the decimal point, and then whatever you read is the number we're putting after the decimal point, but you just got to make sure you put it in the right spot, okay? So this is 2 and, so there's 2 and where's the tenths located? Just one decimal over. So if we have 7/10, it's just going to be in that tenth spot there. Is that okay? -11 and, so we're going to start with -11 and 5/100. Well, where's the 100th spot? 2 spots over, so where does the 5 need to go? 2 spots over, but what do we need here to hold this place value? A 0. So I kind of get to that place value where I need to be, and then I fill anything in front of it with zeros if I need to. All right, C, 703, so 703, is that all right? And 255,000, so thousands is how many spots? 3. And then you fill in the number as best as you can, but do you guys agree that 255 is 3 spots? So we're going to fill all 3 spots. So there's 255. So I kind of get my spots going first and then fill in my number where it goes. All right, last one. -95 10,000. So notice we have nothing in front of the decimal. So we'll write -0.0 because we have nothing in front of our decimals. And 10,000 has how many spots? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 95 needs to go at the end. So where's 95 going to go? At the end here. So what do we need to fill in here? Zeros. Does that make sense, guys? So whatever it says, like 10,000s, thousands, get that many slots and then fill in the number where you need to go. So 255 was all 3, so we didn't need any zeros. 95 was only 2 of the 4, so then we needed 2 zeros there. All right. So the next thing is, well, now that you know decimal place values, realize that decimals are fractions, okay? So when we read it as 7/10, that's literally 7/10. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each number and put it over the appropriate 10, 100, thousandths, or whatever, but then we have to reduce if possible, okay? So this one is in what spot? Tenths, so it's just 7/10. Can 7/10 reduce any? Nope. And so we're done. This one's -35, but where is it in? What spot? 100. So we do -35 over 100. But 35 and 100 both break down, correct? So let's do the same breaking down that we did in chapter 4. How does 35 break down? 5 and 7, right? And how does 10 break down, or 100 break down? 10 times 10, is that okay? But how do 10s break down? 2 times 5, 2 times 5. There's a lot going on there, okay? So remember, 35 is just 5 times 7, and 100 is 10 times 10, but each of the 10s break down to 2 times 5. The only thing that ends up canceling are just a chunk of 5s, right? So what remains on top? -7. What remains on the bottom? 20, because we have 2 times 2, which is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. So you guys just converted, it's crazy that you're doing this. I know you don't think it's as cool, but I think it's really neat. You just converted a decimal, -0.35 or 35 hundredths, to a fraction. 7/20 is the same thing. Like if you put that in your calculator, 7 divided by 20, guess what you're going to get? 0.35. And you're doing all of that without a calculator. All right, 0.094, 94 thousandths, right? So he's going to go over 1,000. But again, we would do a factor tree. I'm just going to save us time for right now and space. 94 is a large even number, so I divide it by 2 and you get 47. But 47 is prime, okay? So that's just 2 and 47. 1,000 is 3 tens, so that's 3 groups of 2 times 5. Write it really small. It's really tiny. But we do all of that to realize what's the only thing that's going to cancel, guys? The 2. Okay? So what's going to be on top? The 47. And if you do all this math, if you multiply all of it, you'll get 500. Or just realize what's 1,000, take away a 2. It's 500. So, again, it kind of blows my mind that you guys are doing this. 94 thousandths is the same thing as 47 over 500 as a fraction. Does everybody see why I put it over 10, 100, 1,000? Okay, it's whatever digit that last digit's in, okay? So the 5 was in the 100 spot, so that's why it's in over 100. This 4 was in the 1,000 spot, so that's why it's over 1,000. This stuff was just chapter 4 that we just did, all right? D, how do we do D? It's a mixed number, okay? That 2 in front of the decimal will just stay a big 2, and we'll focus on the fraction, okay? So this is negative 2 and something. What is 4,005? Where is this? This is in the 10,000 spot. So this is 4,005 over 10,000. That's a god-awful number. But what number goes into both of these since this ends into 5 and this ends into 0? 5, okay? So I'm just going to save us a little bit of time. So this is negative 2, and then this breaks down to 5 times 801 if you did that long division. And this is 5 times 2,000. Again, I'm just doing long division to get those, okay? So this is just 4,005 divided by 5. 801 would be your answer. And then this is just 10,000 divided by 5, 2,000. 801 doesn't break down with 2,000. So your final answer, guys, is negative 2, 801 over 2,000. I would not give you something that awkward on the test. I'd give you something more normal like this. But who knows what my math lab will throw at you, right? And it's one of those things, worst case scenario, if you know to put it over 10,000, but you don't know how to simplify it correctly, you're going to get points. You know, you're in the right step, the right direction, you just didn't simplify. All right. 4 just wants to make sure you feel comfortable comparing sizes of decimals, okay? Again, kind of think money if you can. So here, this is kind of like 20 cents versus 50 cents. What would you rather have? 50 cents. So the 0.5, since they're in the exact same place value, they're still in the 10th spot, but the 5's bigger, we would eat the 5. Here, hopefully there's no question. Anytime you compare a positive with a negative, who's bigger? The positive. But say that negative wasn't there, these two would technically be equal, okay? Even though he has lots of zeros, zeros don't really mean anything, right? The 1 and the 4 are in the exact same spot, so these are really equivalent. Like, you know when you write $1, sometimes you can just put $1, but then sometimes you can put 1.00? They're the same thing. Looking at this one, they're trying to kind of confuse you a little bit. What you do is you just move spot by spot. So the 6 matches, the 4 matches, but then here the 1 is bigger than the 0, right? Or 10 is bigger than 1. So we're going to eat him. So you just move place value by place value, and the second you hit one that's bigger, he will be the one that's being eaten. And then the next one again, there shouldn't be any kind of question because we're comparing a negative with a positive. So who's going to, of course, be bigger? The positive. But if we had to compare it, say this was a positive, the 1 matches, the 5 matches, the 2 zeros match, but at this point, this 3 would be bigger than this 0, so he would be bigger if he were positive, okay? So you just move place value by place value. All right. 5 says now that you know place values, you should be able to round place values. So remember, whatever place value they want you to round, you have to look behind it to decide if you're going to, remember 5 and above, give it a shove, 4 and below, leave it alone, okay? So on number 5A, it says round each to the given place value. So A says 39 hundredths, round it to the nearest tenth. Well, which number is in the 10th spot? The 3, but who's behind the 3? A 9. So this will make it change to what? 4. And what's interesting about this is whenever it's decimals, you leave the rest of it off. Remember before you leave everything behind it as a 0 or whatever? Here, whatever you're rounding to, the nearest tenth should be the only decimal that you have. So the 10th is only one decimal, so we should stop at 0.4. We shouldn't put 0.40. All right, let's look at B, the nearest hundredth. Which one's in the hundredth spot? Tens, hundredths, the 7, right? But who's behind the 7? The 4. The 4 says 4 and below, leave it alone. So this is going to stay negative 0.17, and everything just drops off, okay? The hundredth spot is only 2 decimals, so we should only have 2 decimals in our final answer. Let's look at C, the nearest thousandths. So we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So the 8 is in the thousand spot, but who's behind them? A 2. What's the 2 going to make the 8 do? Stay the same. So this will be 1.478. Everything drops off. And remember, the thousandths is 3 decimals, so our answer should only have 3 decimals. This one's kind of interesting. D, negative 22 and 99 thousandths, that rounded to the nearest hundredth. So we have tenths, hundredths, so this 9. What's that 9 going to make the 9 go to? A 10, which will bump it over to a 1, but it wants the hundredth spot. So how are we going to write this? We're going to write negative 22.10. The 9 changed to 10, correct? The hundredth is 2 decimal spots. Look what we have, 2 decimal spots. Is that the same number as negative 22.1? Yes, but it's not rounded to the nearest hundredth. That would have been rounded to the nearest tenth if we dropped off that 0. So just be careful, because that's one part where my math lab will get picky whether you have a 0 or not. Otherwise, they're the same number. Last ones, guys, on E, they want us to round to the nearest cent or dollar. So this is 0.058 to the nearest cent. A cent is a penny, which is 1/100th of a dollar, right? So it's the hundredth spot. What's that 8 going to change the 5 to? A 6. So this is closest to 6 cents. F is to the nearest dollar. Which one is in the dollar spot? It's like saying the ones, right? So which one's in the ones? The 7, correct? Who's behind the 7? 8. So this just rounds to $18 and everything drops off. Would you guys agree if you had $17.88, that's closer to $18 versus $17? And that's the whole idea behind rounding to the nearest dollar or the nearest